Chào mừng quý vị và các bạn đến với chương trình Tôi và Việt Nam trên kênh truyền hình FBNC. Quý vị có thể xem lại chương trình này trên trang web tôi và Việt Nam fbnc.com. Và trong chương trình ngày hôm nay, chúng tôi mời quý vị cùng theo dõi một cuộc trao đổi chúng tôi đã thực hiện với giáo sư Tony Wagner, giáo sư của Đại học Harvard nổi tiếng. Giáo sư đã đến Việt Nam để chia sẻ về một bài thuyết trình liên quan đến chủ đề là sáng tạo, đổi mới cũng như là các kỹ năng để thành công cho các ứng viên trong môi trường làm việc của thế kỷ 21. Và thật bất ngờ khi ông nhấn mạnh rằng tại các trường đại học nổi tiếng, ngay cả như là trường Harvard, thì các sinh viên cũng đã không được chuẩn bị một cách đầy đủ những kỹ năng cần thiết cho môi trường làm việc thực tế sau này. Mời quý vị cùng đến với những chia sẻ của giáo sư Tony Wagner đến từ Đại học Harvard sau đây. So, Dr. Tony Wagner, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Con. Great to be with you.
So, it's interesting in your book, Global Achievement Gap, you talk about 7 survival skills. That's a lot of school right now, even top school like Harvard, don't prepare enough for the student before they get into the real world. Could you talk briefly about those skills and
Yes.
why are they important?
Yeah. Well, first, you need to understand, I didn't make these skills up. It's very important that people understand. I did a wide range of interviews over several years with executives from many companies, as well as with community leaders and college teachers, and even did focus groups with students who were recently graduated. And from all of them, I began to see a pattern. I asked all of them, what are the skills that matter most, and what are the gaps? Over and over again, I kept hearing reference to 7 essential skills, core competencies. I call them the 7 survival skills.
Okay.
Very briefly, they are: number 1, critical thinking and problem solving. Turns out that the leaders in any sector, big business, small business, nonprofit, expect all of their employees to think about how to continuously improve the product, the process, or service. Secondly, collaboration across networks and leading by influence. Increasingly, all work is being done collaboratively, but it's not being directed by mid-level supervisors anymore. Peers have to learn to lead one another through influence. Third survival skill, agility and adaptability. And it's simply the pace of change, the complexity of problems demands people be agile and adaptable. Fourth survival skill, initiative and entrepreneurialism. Leaders of large companies worry constantly about how to keep that entrepreneurial spirit alive in their companies so that it's the lifeblood of their companies. The fifth survival skill, effective oral and written communication. And it's the number 1 complaint of both employers and teachers, that young people often don't know how to write well, they tell me, because they don't know how to think well. Sixth survival skill, accessing and analyzing information. The amount of information growing exponentially, changing constantly. If you don't know how to analyze that information and apply it, you really can't function in a knowledge economy. And the last survival skill, of course, is curiosity and imagination.
So those skills are not strength at all. It's some of the skills that we see that before. So I want to follow up a little bit on the top skill, critical thinking. A lot of people talk about critical thinking, but could you define critical thinking in the very easy understanding way? Because it's not like you think critically. What is it anyway?
Yeah. Well, you know, when I asked executives what they meant by critical thinking, the response I got was very, very consistent. They told me critical thinking is all about learning how to ask really good questions. Ask the right questions. Because they told me that, in fact, problem identification is the skill they value most highly, and you can't figure out what the right problem is unless you ask the right questions.
Asking the right questions. So that's a good point though, because in school nowadays, in my school and in Vietnamese education system as well, for years, students and teachers, when students come to class, it was just one-way learning.
Yes.
The student just listen to the teacher say, they just follow exactly like that. There's no asking back the questions. There's no criticizing the material that the teacher deliver. So for an old system that both teachers and students never practice critical thinking, what are some of the first steps to change that behavior? What to begin?
Well, I think the first step is to understand why we need critical thinking, why it's important, and what's changed in the world. So our old education systems around the world are based on the idea of knowledge scarcity. There's a limited amount of knowledge, and the only way to get it is through a teacher. Because, you know, we didn't have a lot of books in the past, and only teachers had the knowledge we needed. So the old system made sense in an old world, where knowledge was scarce, knowledge was limited, and the only way you could get it was through a teacher. And only that, knowledge did not change. So what you as a teacher taught me last year would still be true next year. None of that is true anymore. Today, knowledge has become a commodity, growing exponentially, changing constantly, available for free on every internet-connected device. So there's no longer a competitive advantage in knowing that person, knowing more than the person next to you, because that person is going to figure it out just in time. It's going to go Google it. The world no longer cares how much you know. What the world cares about is what you can do with what you know. So what teachers need to first understand is that acquiring knowledge is only a very small part of the learning problem today. The larger problem is, do you have the skill and the motivation to apply what you've learned, to solve new problems, to ask new questions? How do you start that? I think you begin by designing a curriculum around questions. So for example, in some of the best schools that I've visited, there might be an entire semester's curriculum around climate change. Is climate change happening in our world? If so, why, and what can we do about it? These are not questions that have simple answers. So you're teaching students to inquire, to investigate, to weigh evidence, to understand conflicting points of view, to think about alternative possibilities. All of that is a part of critical thinking. Critical thinking is not one skill. Critical thinking involves a number of different skills: the ability to weigh evidence, the ability to understand different perspectives, the ability to think about different possibilities. Imagine if something happens. The ability to really critically evaluate, why is this important and to whom?
So should teachers come up with better tests, you mean?
Well, if you think about a government strategy, the first challenge is for the leaders of a country to really clearly understand the skills that matter most in the knowledge economy. Innovation is not just critical for the future of individuals. It's critical for the future of organizations. It's critical for the future of a country. So it is in Vietnam's best interest as a country to clearly understand the skills that matter most in an innovation economy. So I've been talking here with business leaders and urging them to advocate for clearly describing those skills. Then once we've done that, then a next step is to transform assessments. Sadly, what gets tested is all that gets taught in most countries. So if we want better teaching, we have to have better testing. And multiple recall, factual tests tell us absolutely nothing about the ability to innovate. So we need a new generation of assessments. The best corporations today don't rely on standardized test scores to tell them whether or not to hire somebody. They use collective human judgment informed by evidence. So I want to see teachers and employers and college teachers looking together at students' work, saying, is this work evidence of mastery of the skills that matter most in the new economy, and that should be the requirement for graduation, not passing multiple choice tests.
Và những chia sẻ vừa rồi cũng đã khép lại phần 1 của chương trình Tôi và Việt Nam trên kênh FBNC ngày hôm nay. Quý vị có thể xem lại chương trình này trên trang web tôi và Việt Nam fbnc.com. Và trong phần tiếp theo thì giáo sư Tony Wagner của Đại học Harvard sẽ chia sẻ thêm về tinh thần sáng tạo và đổi mới, làm thế nào để tạo ra một môi trường kích thích sự sáng tạo đổi mới trong công việc.